This is more than just the story of a goal scorer. This is the story of a boy who defied fate before he even took his first breath, a kid who found a brother in Lionel Messi through unimaginable heartbreak, and a man who etched his name into history with one swing of his right foot. This is the life of Sergio El Kun Agüero, a journey so unbelievable, so packed with raw emotion, you have to hear it to believe it. And if you love stories that show the heart behind the beautiful game, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss what we have in store. Our story begins in 1988 with a journey born of desperation. Sergio's parents, still just teenagers themselves, made the daunting move to the sprawling metropolis of Buenos Aires. They were chasing a ghost, a glimmer of hope for a better life, a safe space to raise Sergio's older sister. But they were desperately poor. His father, Lionel, was the family's lone provider, scraping together what little he could as a taxi driver and a part-time footballer on the dusty local pitches. The money was so tight, so scarce, that he had to build their family home with his own two hands, brick by painstaking brick. They had so little, in fact, that to get the walls high enough, he had to stack the bricks vertically, a fragile defense against the world. It was a house built on hope, and not much else. Just as they were finding their footing, things took a terrifying turn. Adriana, Sergio's mother, discovered she was pregnant with him. And then, as if on cue, the heavens opened. Buenos Aires was battered by the worst floods it had seen in decades. For a family living in a self-made house right on the riverbank, it was a catastrophe. For 2 agonizing weeks, they lived with the filthy floodwater up to their hips, their few possessions floating around them in the murky darkness. Eventually, the inevitable happened, and they were evacuated, forced to seek refuge on mattresses laid out on the cold, hard floor of a local church. When the waters finally receded and they returned home, a final cruel blow awaited them. The house had been looted. Everything was gone. They had absolutely nothing left to their name. And just when it felt like things couldn't possibly get any worse, they did. Adriana's waters broke months before the baby was due. The local hospital, already completely overwhelmed by the flood's aftermath, had no room. They were forced to embark on an epic, desperate journey across the city, 3 agonizing hours, 2 buses, and 1 train to find a place that would take her. When she finally arrived at a hospital, the news was just as grim. The only option, they said, was for her to endure the pain, to fight her own body, and somehow impossibly stop herself from giving birth. Against all odds, for months, she did just that. She lay there completely alone, in a sterile room, with no other patients for company, and without her husband, who had to work every hour God sent just to scrape together enough money for the baby he hadn't even met. She was only 18 years old. In a baffling, almost cruel twist, the hospital discharged her just 2 weeks before her official due date. Days later, back in their patched-up home, she went into labor again, forcing her to repeat that grueling 3-hour journey. And even then, the ordeal wasn't over. The doctors informed her the baby was stuck and they would need to use forceps. But Adriana, terrified the metal instruments could harm her child, refused. She chose a much more painful natural procedure instead. Finally, somehow, after a battle that began long before he was even born, Sergio Lionel Agüero entered the world. And as the doctor handed him to his exhausted mother after a checkup, he smiled and uttered a famous Spanish saying, "Este bebé nació con un pan debajo del brazo." This baby was born with a loaf of bread under his arm. He was going to bring his family good luck. Watching little Sergio grow up, it became obvious that football wasn't just in his destiny. It was his destiny. The coincidences were almost comical. His family moved twice, and each time, by sheer dumb luck, their new house was located right beside a makeshift football pitch. The 3rd time they moved, the corner flag of the local dirt field was literally a single meter from their front door. It was after one of these moves that Sergio earned the nickname that would follow him forever, Kun. The family had finally managed to afford a tiny television, and little Sergio would toddle around the house captivated by a Japanese cartoon character, Kum Kum. He'd run around imitating the character's sounds, yelling Kun Kun at any family member he saw. The name stuck. By the age of 5, Kun was already a local legend, playing for money in the rough-and-tumble street games of Buenos Aires. He was so good, so obviously special, that he was constantly being scouted. It reached a point where he was unofficially playing for 5 different clubs at the same time. His father, recognizing the once-in-a-generation talent in his son, made an incredible sacrifice. He quit his own footballing career to become a full-time chauffeur for his 7-year-old prodigy, driving him from match to match, ensuring he never missed a chance to play. When he turned 9, the official offers started flooding their mailbox. Some even came from powerhouse clubs in Europe. But small, almost petty details always seemed to get in the way, keeping Kun in Argentina close to his family. Then one day, a man named Samuel Liberman, a shrewd Argentine businessman, heard the whispers about this incredible boy. He swept in and outmaneuvered every single club in the race to sign him. He didn't just offer a contract. He offered a new life. He moved the family to a house in a better, safer neighborhood, sent Sergio to a private school, and supplied them with money, clothes, and top-tier training equipment. In Liberman's own words, he gave them anything he could ever need. And most importantly, he struck a deal with the historic club Independiente. Sergio Agüero had his first official club. The deal was even more fascinating because years earlier, Liberman had taken a similar chance on another young, promising talent from South America, a kid named Diego Forlan. Little did anyone know their paths were destined to cross again in a truly terrifying, striking partnership. From there, things just got more and more insane. After only 2 years in Independiente's youth system, his talent was making headlines in the national papers. One journalist, completely mesmerized, wrote that Agüero was the kind of talent you can bet your house on. With this newfound fame came the first mind-bending offers. The Italian giants Juventus sent his parents a check with so many zeros on it, they nearly fainted just looking at it. But still they held off. Instead, they signed him with the international management agency, IMG. This move secured their financial future and eventually led to the teenagers signing a lucrative sponsorship deal with Nike. Then, just days after his 15th birthday, the moment he had dreamed of his entire life arrived. He was named in the first team squad for a Primera Division match. He was going to make his professional debut. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was officially the youngest player to ever do so in the history of the Argentine First Division, and by a considerable margin. The match itself didn't go quite to plan, but a small, seemingly insignificant detail that day would ripple through the future of football. 200 miles away, another young footballing genius sat in his living room, glued to the television, watching the game in complete and utter awe. That boy was Kun's future best friend, a quiet kid from Rosario named Lionel Messi. Their paths would soon cross for the first time. After a stellar debut for Argentina's under-16s in the 2004 Sudamericano, where Agüero banged in 3 goals in 4 matches, they met at the national team's training grounds. Agüero, ever the extrovert, walked up to the shy, quiet kid and asked for his name. He was told he was that one kid playing for Barcelona. Only months later, the two would join forces for the 2005 Under-20 World Cup. And it was there, amidst the pressure and excitement of a global tournament, that an unbreakable bond was forged in the fires of tragedy. Upon arriving at the tournament in the Netherlands, Agüero received the most devastating news of his young life. His childhood best friend, Emiliano Molina, a talented goalkeeper at Independiente, with whom he had grown up and risen through the ranks, had been in a serious car crash. Agüero was instantly consumed by grief and anxiety, becoming depressed and obsessive, constantly on the phone with his family, desperate for updates on his friend's condition. The coaching staff grew incredibly worried. They even went so far as to turn off the Wi-Fi in the team hotel, terrified that if the worst happened, Agüero would find out through a cold, impersonal news report. But fate, it seems, had other plans. In a stroke of serendipity, Lionel Messi was chosen to be his roommate. And for some unknown reason, Messi's phone could still connect to the hotel's Wi-Fi. One morning, waking up earlier than the rest of the team, it was Messi who scrolled through the news and found the horrible, gut-wrenching truth: Emiliano had passed away. In that moment, Messi had to make a decision that no teenager should ever have to make. He didn't shy away from it. He gently woke up Agüero and told him face-to-face what had happened. That moment, that single act of compassionate bravery, was the true beginning of their friendship. Messi held his new friend as he sobbed uncontrollably, and he did his absolute best to support him throughout the rest of the tournament. And somehow, through the fog of grief, they both went on to have an amazing tournament, becoming world champions and allowing Agüero to honor his friend on the world's biggest stage, displaying a shirt that read, "Para vos, Emiliano." This is for you, Emiliano. From that day forward, the two were inseparable. Agüero had lost one brother, but gained another. A brother who would join him on a quest to conquer everything they set their eyes on. After that emotionally charged tournament, Agüero returned to Argentina and proceeded to have his breakout season. If the year before, the legendary coach Cesar Luis Menotti had been mocked in the press for saying the kid reminded him of the Brazilian icon Romário, nobody was laughing by the end of that season. Agüero was simply electric. He scored a phenomenal 18 league goals, earned his first senior cap for the national team, and scored the undisputed goal of the year, celebrating, of course, by once again revealing his "Para vos, Emiliano" shirt. He starred in a TV show alongside his idol Diego Maradona, filmed his first Nike commercials, signed million-dollar sponsorship deals, and to top it all off, had every major club in Europe scrambling for his signature. He eventually settled on a move to Spain, joining Atlético de Madrid for a staggering 23 million euros. It was a record transfer fee for Argentine football, and at the time, Atlético's most expensive signing ever. Just to put that into perspective, if you adjust for inflation, that's the equivalent of about 89 million euros in today's money. For a 17-year-old, he was a real-life unicorn, or as we say in the world of football, a true wonder kid. In his first season in Madrid, the club wisely managed his minutes, keeping him in and out of the squad to give him the time he needed to adapt to a new country and a more physical league. But he still managed to leave his mark, forming a memorable and surprisingly effective partnership with the club's golden boy, Fernando Torres. The two even got matching tattoos. Agüero netted 7 goals in that debut season, including a particularly special one away at the mighty Camp Nou. That summer, however, with Messi absent, Agüero was tasked with leading the Argentinian under-20 national team. And it's hard to put into words just how dominant he was. After a relatively quiet first game, he went on an absolute tear, leading Argentina to 6 consecutive wins. He bagged 6 goals, provided 3 assists, and even scored the crucial first goal as he inspired Argentina to pull off a dramatic comeback in the final against the Czech Republic. He walked away with the Player of the Tournament award and the Golden Boot as the top scorer, famously giving a post-match press conference with all 3 trophies sitting proudly in front of him. Back at Atlético, he joined forces with that other Samuel Liberman discovery, Diego Forlan, and together they were unstoppable. Agüero enjoyed his first truly world-class season, hitting the incredible 30-goal mark and providing 11 assists. He spearheaded Atlético's charge to qualify for the Champions League for the first time since their humiliating relegation in the early 2000s. His performances earned him the prestigious Golden Boy Award, and he became the undisputed poster boy of Atletico's rebirth. But 2008 was only going to get better for him. First, he won an Olympic gold medal partnering up with his best friend Messi and scoring a brilliant brace against their arch-rivals Brazil in the semi-finals. Then he hit the headlines once again, this time for a very different reason. He married none other than Giannina Maradona, the daughter of the legendary Diego Maradona. Their first son, Benjamin, might just be the luckiest kid in the world. Imagine having Diego Maradona as your grandpa, Sergio Agüero as your dad, and Lionel Messi as your godfather. The pressure to be a footballer must be immense. Just imagine if he decided to become a basketball player. The following season, Agüero continued his blistering form, averaging about a goal contribution every 90 minutes, as Atletico secured another impressive fourth-place finish. And in 2010, he experienced his greatest moment as an Atletico player. He was the architect of their glorious Europa League triumph, masterminding a comeback from a goal down in the final, and assisting Forlan for both goals to lead the club to its most successful season in over a decade. But the following year, things quickly turned sour. Despite scoring in a surprising victory over Inter Milan in the European Super Cup and being in some of the best form of his life with 20 league goals, a tally second only to the otherworldly Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, something shifted. Out of nowhere, Agüero, now 23 years old, went against his previous public statements that he would stay at Atletico until the end of his contract. He demanded that it be terminated, refused to celebrate a hat-trick on the final match day of the season, and made a series of inflammatory public statements that burned his bridges with the club and its fans. The departure was messy and left a bitter taste in the mouths of the supporters who had once adored him. By the time the club finally reached a deal with Manchester City for his transfer, he had done enough damage to his reputation that at the very next match, the Atletico fans unfurled a massive banner that read, in no uncertain terms, "Agüero, we hope you die." This is one of those moments in a player's career that really divides people. He felt he needed a move to a club with bigger ambitions, but the way he forced it left a scar. What do you guys think? Was he justified in pushing for the transfer to advance his career? Or did he betray the club that gave him his big European break? Let me know your honest thoughts down in the comments. Regardless of the controversy, City paid a whopping €40 million for him, making him the most expensive signing in their history. Keen to follow in the footsteps of his childhood idol, the English striker Michael Owen Agüero arrived in the Premier League. And while most foreign players can take months or even years to adapt to the pace and physicality of English football, for Agüero, it was instant. It was love at first sight. He announced his arrival by scoring 2 goals and assisting another on his debut. He was involved in an incredible 33 goals in that very first season, with 10 of those coming in the final 8 matches as City and noisy neighbours battled with Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United for the title right down to the wire. It all came down to the final minute of the final day of the season. City needed a win against Queen's Park Rangers at home to secure the title, but found themselves trailing as the match went into injury time. A late equalizer gave them a glimmer of hope, but they still needed one more goal. And then as the clock ticked past 93 minutes with the hopes of half of Manchester on his shoulders, it was none other than Sergio Agüero who popped up, took a touch, and smashed the ball into the back of the net. It is without a doubt the single most memorable and dramatic goal in the history of English football. He had handed them their first ever Premier League trophy at the very last second. He could have retired at that exact moment, never kicked a ball again, and he would have been a footballing legend forever. He kept going, of course. But the following season was a difficult one. A string of nagging injuries, a painful divorce from his wife, and the sacking of manager Roberto Mancini all contributed to a substantial drop in his goal tally. Still, with the arrival of new manager Manuel Pellegrini, his role in the team shifted. He was no longer a second striker. He was now the team's primary goal scorer. And even though his injury problems worsened, allowing him the opportunity to play the full 90 minutes on only 5 occasions, his output was absolutely wild. He averaged a goal contribution every 59 minutes, 17 goals and 9 assists in just 23 matches. In any other season, that kind of ridiculous efficiency would have not only won him the Golden Boot, but would have put him on pace to shatter the Premier League's all-time single-season goal-scoring record. As it was enough to earn him another Premier League winner's medal. This, however, became a recurring and frustrating theme in his career, despite always being one of the deadliest strikers on the planet. The sheer amount of game time he would miss through injury would consistently rob him of the individual awards his talent so clearly deserved. Unfortunately, that summer his blistering club form did not carry over to the World Cup in Brazil. He would finish the entire tournament without a single goal or assist, coming on as a late substitute in the final, only to watch from up close as Argentina lived through one of the darkest days in its footballing history, losing to Germany in extra time. And the heartbreak wouldn't stop there. In 2015, he finished the season by winning his one and only Premier League Golden Boot with an impressive 26 league goals. However, City would lose out on the title to Chelsea. And that same pattern of personal triumph and collective disappointment would repeat itself that summer at the Copa America, with Agüero scoring 3 goals in the tournament only for Argentina to lose another major final, this time on penalties, to Chile. To continue his streak of bad luck after a final disappointing season with Pellegrini in 2016, where City limped to a 4th-place finish and lost out on a spot in the Champions League final. Thanks to a cruel own goal, Agüero ended a season where his only truly memorable highlight was an incredible 5-goal haul in just 23 minutes against Newcastle. He then joined the Argentinian national team for yet another international tournament, the 2016 Copa America Centenario, from which they would once again be ejected in the final match, losing to Chile on penalties for the 2nd year in a row. This time the blow was so harsh, so soul-crushing, that both Messi and Agüero publicly considered retiring from international football altogether. Had it not been for the passionate uprising in the streets of Argentina, with fans begging their heroes to return, we may have never seen the two of them put on the famous Albiceleste kit ever again. But then, a new era began at Manchester. Pep Guardiola arrived, and he demanded more from Agüero, much more. He famously claimed, "It is not enough to just receive the ball from his teammates. You cannot be brilliant if you disappear when the ball isn't at your feet." It was a pretty harsh critique, and some pundits doubted whether Guardiola had any right to say this about a player who was already an all-time club great. But the reality is, Pep was right. In his very first season under Guardiola, not only did Agüero score an impressive 20 league goals, but his sprint frequency went up by an incredible 40%, and his distance covered increased by an extra kilometer per match. Guardiola had taken a great player and forged him into a different, more complete beast. His transformation was a key part of City's subsequent dominance, but it also marked a new chapter of highs and lows in his career. The journey from there is filled with record-breaking titles, more international heartbreak, and a final shocking twist that no one saw coming. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Koon's incredible story and want to see how it all unfolds, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're dedicated to telling the greatest stories in football history, and you won't want to miss what's next. No matter how much changed or how dominant Manchester City became domestically, winning back-to-back titles in the following 2 years, with breathtaking football, they repeatedly failed to make a significant mark on the international stage. The Champions League trophy remained elusive. And with Agüero hitting 32 years of age by 2019, he began to take on a more secondary role in the squad. He was being overlooked more and more by Guardiola, starting less than half of the available league matches that season, and for the first time in years, failing to hit the 20-goal mark in the league. But it was exactly then, Just as his star seemed to be fading, that one last golden opportunity fell right into his lap. With just one season left on his contract, City went on a magical, unexpected run, playing their way to the final of the Champions League for the very first time in their history. It was set to be the last match Agüero would ever play for Manchester City. The narrative was perfect. It was highly publicized, City were the favorites to win, and Agüero lifting the Champions League trophy would be the perfect storybook send-off. It would be a final validation, especially as he had been mocked for years for City's lack of success in the competition after he had claimed in an interview early in his career that he would only leave the club once they had won the tournament. But then, they lost. And that was it. No happy ending. Sometimes that's just how football is. Ruthless. But with 41 goals in the competition, even if Agüero falls short of some of his contemporaries, it is still an impressive record that puts him above the likes of legends like Wayne Rooney, Edinson Cavani, and Samuel Eto'o. Thankfully, just a few weeks later that summer, he would experience the complete opposite end of the emotional spectrum. Despite spending most of the tournament on the bench, he was a part of the Argentina squad for their much-anticipated and ultimately victorious Copa America run. He finally got to live out one of his greatest dreams, lifting a major international trophy alongside his best friend, Lionel Messi, after both had come so close to quitting the national team for good. And what better way to follow up that career-defining high than by joining Messi at Barcelona for one final run together? Once again, it seemed like a fairy tale ending was destined for Agüero. But just like before, it all crumbled to dust in what felt like a millisecond. First, with many football insiders theorizing that Barcelona had only signed Agüero in the hopes of using his friendship with Messi as a bargaining chip to keep their one-away superstar at the club. Their move fell completely flat. Messi joined PSG regardless, leaving Agüero completely shocked and alone in Catalonia and making him the butt of countless jokes and memes on social media. It was already a pretty depressing and embarrassing moment for a player of his stature. But Agüero was determined to make the most of his move regardless. And it seemed like everything would be okay until after just 5 matches for Barcelona, he was playing against Alaves. All of a sudden on the pitch, he started feeling dizzy. In his own words, he said, "I tried to shout at the referee to stop the game, but I couldn't get the words out. So instead, I just grabbed a defender's hand and asked him for help." With a strong stabbing pain in his chest, Agüero was taken off the pitch and put under surveillance at a hospital for 3 days. He said it himself, he didn't think much of it at first, but then he saw the look on the doctors' faces and began to feel nervous. Soon they would be telling him the words that every professional athlete dreads. They told him that while he could try to play football again, it could go very, very wrong, and that the best, safest option for his life was to leave his career behind. It led to one of the most emotional press conferences in recent memory, as Agüero, through tears, announced his immediate retirement from football. And though his doctor would later claim in public that there was a small chance he would be fine, Agüero eventually confirmed that, ever since that day, even a single short sprint would leave him completely gasping for air. And with that, everyone's hopes of a miracle comeback died out. The player left us with one final remarkable quote saying, "I am glad that at least it happened only now. It allowed me to live out most of my dreams. My last goal was in El Clásico, and the chip I have implanted in my chest makes me feel like Iron Man. What more could I ask for?" And that's where the incredible heart-stopping story of Sergio Agüero's playing career concludes. What a journey, right? From defying the odds at birth to scoring the most famous goal in Premier League history. It was a roller coaster of emotion. I'm so eager to hear your thoughts. What moment from his career stands out to you the most? Was it that goal against QPR, his bond with Messi, or his fighting spirit to the very end? Please share all your opinions, your favorite memories, and any questions you still have in the comments below. I truly love reading them and building this amazing football community with all of you. Thanks for watching.